People who almost die, but live because of a gut decision. What's your story? I went to my urologist with epididymitis. He found the smallest amount of detectable blood in my urine. On a whim, he sent me to have an IVP. They put dye in your blood, and radiologist has a look. He saw a mass on my left kidney. 20 minutes later I knew I had cancer, and I saw the blood supply to the mass. That was on Thursday. Tests Friday. Monday he took out my kidney with a grapefruit-sized stage 3 tumor. There was no margin. Many years later my wife told me the doctor told her that I had a 50-50 chance of living 6 months. That was 1992. Lucky me. Glad you're still here. When I was 14, my cousin Nan, I found my uncle's gun stash in his closet. My cousin grabbed a pistol and pointed it at my head with his finger on the trigger. I quickly told him to stop, and that's not funny. He glared at me and told me, "It's not loaded," while he pointed it at the floor and pulled the trigger. Gun was loaded and blew a big hole in the floor. I think about this a lot. I brought it up once to my cousin and he started to cry. That experience cut us both deep. One time working at a grocery store at night, I had cart duty and had to collect all the carts from the parking lot and bring them into the store. It was dark out and I had my headphones in, and I was looking at the ground and pushing a chain of carts when suddenly it got darker. I stopped for a split second to wonder how it could get darker when it was already night, and bam! One of the huge 30+ feet high parking lot lights smashed onto the ground right in front of me, hit the carts and missed me by 2 feet. The metal had rusted out and it snapped at the base. If I hadn't stopped to wonder how it got darker, I would have definitely died. I was traveling in the Philippines in northern Luzon. That's the part always hit hard by typhoons. It was just the beginning of rainy season. I was in Banao and was planning to go up north to Sagada the next day, Saturday. The Lonely Planet writes about this route as the scariest road in the world. It's solid mountain on one side and deep on the other. There was a jeepney scheduled in the morning and one in the afternoon. Everyone who knows me knows that I'm not a morning person, and if there is a later option, I'm definitely taking this one. On a whim the night before I decided to leave earlier and take the 8 a.m. jeep. Super out of character for me, and I'm still not sure why I did it. A few days later, on another bus, I chatted with this nice lady and she asked me what places in the Philippines I've been to so far. And she says, "Oh my god, have you heard about the jeepney accident on Saturday afternoon on the road from Banao to Sagada?" So apparently the jeepney I planned to take came upon a mountain slide, lost control and went down the side of the mountain. 10 people died. No one survived. My mom. I was almost 15. I had put on a lot of water weight and she was worried about it. Finally I was in pain and she realized it was literally just water weight, so took me to the hospital. First her was like, "Oh yeah, it's just thyroid. Take this and follow up with your doctor." Mom waited a few hours but felt uncomfortable, so she drove me to another who told her if she hadn't gotten me in when she did, I would have died before the follow-up. My kidneys had failed. I'm better now. Gut decision A. I had a change in my bowel movements, went to the doctor, got screened for colon polyps, and had a huge one removed. It would have eventually turned into cancer. Scopes aren't fun, but they save lives. I was drinking and felt something stick in the back of my throat. I almost forced it down because it was really far back and awkward to cough up. But I decided to spit it out anyways. It was a shard of glass from the bottle I was drinking out of. It still creeps me out to think about even years later because I really was just going to swallow it. As long as I can remember, whenever my dad would open a bottle, he would always stick in the tip of his thumb and make a pop sound. He did it so much that I'm doing it. Learned late in life he did it to feel the rim of the bottle for the exact reason you described here, except he swallowed it. In high school at a graduation party, I had a really bad feeling about the guy me and my friends had gotten a ride there with. I'll call him H. I didn't know him well, but I saw him drinking and wasn't sure how much. He was supposed to be our ride home when the party was over. My one friend said she trusted him and not to worry. Well, I couldn't tell myself not to worry like she could. I said again to her that I didn't think it was safe to drive home with him. She insisted it was fine. Meanwhile, I had made a new friend that night. The first time I saw him, I felt like I should talk to him. Turns out he drove there alone and was staying sober to drive home. By 5 a.m., everyone was talking about grabbing an after-party coffee and some snacks. People were piling into cars. I told my friend one last time I wouldn't drive with H. I got in the car with my new friend, knowing he was 100% sober. We pulled out onto the country road. As it snaked through the trees, H came speeding out and passed us way too quickly. As we drove around the next corner, we went through a cloud of dust and debris. H's car was wrapped around a telephone pole. 2 of the 4 passengers were dead, including the kid who got in the seat I would have been in. My friend was alive but has permanent injuries to this day. Edit. I appreciate everyone listening to my story. Please don't drink and drive. Please help your friends realize how much damage it can cause. If it was a gut decision so much as just being knowledgeable and acting, but still I think it is a pretty wild instance of a near-death experience. My family and I were on holiday in Thailand over the Christmas period years ago, and were staying in a hotel close to the beach in Phuket. I was only 7 and my 2 brothers were even younger. We had been bugging my parents to go jet skiing for days on end, much to my parents' annoyance. But on Boxing Day, they finally relented. After breakfast, we went down to the beach to have a look around for somewhere to find a jet ski rental, but before any of that could happen, my dad, a surfer of many years, saw the tide receding in a way that was completely unnatural and recognized the coming tsunami. We thought he was full of it, but he was deadly serious, so we raced back to the hotel, where we considered running for the hills. But on the consultation of another couple that recognized the impending disaster, decided to sit tight in our building, which was relatively short and stout. Plus, we were on the top floor. Sure enough, the tsunami came and bulldozed Phuket. Although it only destroyed the lobby of our building, we were safe. I have no doubt we all would have died if my dad hadn't known the early signs of a tsunami. We were also on Phi Island a couple days before that, and if we had been there on Boxing Day instead, we might well have died too. Just an all-round crazy experience that I'm lucky to have made it out of. I was out late one night. My car had broken down in the middle of an interchange that was so deserted there was no one there. For miles, I did what any other person would do and called a towing number, and what actually got through it was almost 1 a.m. I decided to go take a piss down at some bushes when suddenly I heard some bikes approaching the car. I wanted to head out immediately to stop them for help when my legs froze and I thought twice. From behind the bush I basically saw them try to ransack the car, and apparently they were all armed. Thank goodness I remained still, because these guys meant business. They fired multiple shots into the windscreen and door. It was an old Toyota Hilux, so there was nothing in there. They busted all 4 wheels with bullets before getting back on their bikes and zooming off. I believe they were all high off, which was why they didn't bother to check around, or maybe they thought I just deserted that area. Long story short, I walked a bit further into an open field and sat on the thick branches of a tree where I could see approaching objects. The towing truck didn't get there until past 4 a.m. in the morning, and I can tell y'all that was the longest night of my life. I made it home in one piece. In 1976, I was on vacation with my parents in Colorado, and we drive through Big Thompson Canyon. My mom, brother, and I all wanted to stay at one of the little hotels within the canyon, but my dad said no, and we continued on our way home to Illinois. After we got home, we saw on the news that the canyon flooded, killing over 100 people. Had we stayed there, we would have probably been killed too. I was riding my bike to school as normal, and I was about 12 and I stopped at a crossing. All the cars stopped, but I felt that something was off and waited a little longer. As soon as I started to cross, there was a flash of green as a Range Rover speeded past me, barely a hair from the front wheel of my bike. If I had started to cross sooner, then I would have been hit head-on and most likely not have survived, as the car was going that fast. I was so shaky that I turned round and headed home, explaining to my mum what happened. As I was still shaking, she believed me and made me a hot chocolate. I really like that your mom made you hot chocolate. That's a good mom. About 10 years ago, my mom and I stopped at Taco Bell for lunch. I was driving and she was the passenger. I parked my pickup truck with my front tent facing the street in front of an electrical post. I thought we were eating in, but my mom said no. let's order to go. She told me what she wanted and said she'd wait for me in the truck. For some reason, I just did not want to leave her there. I was insistent that she come in with me. What if I get the order wrong? I said, come on, just come in with me. Mind you, I was like 20 to 21 at the time, plenty old enough to go in a restaurant to order on my own. But something just told me she had to come too. She relented and came in with me. I had just barely finished placing the order when I heard a strange sound outside behind me. The cashier taking my order looked outside right after returning my debit card and says, "Wow, that crash looks bad." I turned around and it turns out that a drunk driver at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday zoomed down the wrong side of the road and slammed into the post I was parked in front of. The driver died on impact. The post collapsed and crushed the cab of my truck on the passenger side. Needless to say, I lost the pickup truck but kept my mom. Few years ago went on a trip to Cuba and Mexico. Last minute decided to stay longer in Havana despite mess that Hurricane Irma has left behind. Few days without electricity was actually oddly amazing. We were supposed to be flying to Mexico City. Our Mexico City airborne building collapsed during earthquake. There was no logical reason behind our decision about staying. I just proposed it and my partner agreed. Crazy. Former professional motorcycle instructor here. I was riding a motorcycle at night on Highway 17 in Northern California, an infamously dangerous and twisty mountain pass with low visibility around most corners. Each direction of the highway has 2 lanes. For no particular reason, I decided to change lanes. Around the next corner, there was a washing machine in my original lane that was only visible after it would have been too late to avoid. At highway speeds, a collision like that would have sent me to the hospital with life-threatening injuries. That one still messes with my head. It bothers me immensely that someone left a washing machine on a highway. Had a weird feeling something was seriously wrong with me when I stood up and almost passed out at a big football game. We left the stadium and went to the ER. Turns out my appendix was ruptured and I needed surgery ASAP. I had been having stomach pain prior to this but brushed it off as digestion problems. Good thing I went. Edit. We were watching the Cotton Bowl in Texas. My wife got me tickets for Christmas as the college we went was playing that year. We are from Michigan, so we had quite the drive to get to Texas. My appendix ruptured in the 3rd quarter and I ended up finishing the game in the hospital. We stayed a few extra days, but I had to get back to college, so my wife drove 17 hours straight and we had to get out of the car every 45 minutes to an hour so I could walk around to avoid blood clotting. She was my fiance at the time, and this trip really made us stronger, and I knew we would have a happy marriage. Thanks for all the well wishes. Mid-1990s, traveled to northern New Jersey with a friend from college. It was his hometown. We had plans to visit New York City and see a former roommate who graduated the year before. Friend 2. Well, a friendly friend who dabbled in low-level organized crime since his last years in college. We had some knowledge of this but were not involved. He invited us to an associate's house with plans to go out afterward. We declined. Not our scene. In fact, both of us had applied to law school. I planned to pursue a career in federal law enforcement thereafter. We both wanted distance from that nonsense. We tried the following day to reach our friend for a low-key lunch before heading out of town. No answer. Well, local police found his body 2 days later, along with 2 other bodies, at the house to which he invited us. He was murdered at the meeting. Social situation. Could have been us too. I knew that was bad news. I'm not sure we would have died, but it wouldn't have been pretty. We had a fire going in the backyard at a friend's house. My friend's dad decided to burn some junk from the garage, mostly old boxes and papers and stuff. So we're helping feed that stuff into the fire. I grabbed the next small box to throw in and I can tell there's something in this one. There had been stuff in most of them, but it was always just pamphlets and little bits of packaging. So we had stopped really checking and were just throwing them in. Well, I'm standing there with the box over the fire about to drop it when I decide to check this one. It was full of live mortar shell fireworks. My friend's dad decided we had burned enough garage junk at that point. I was running down escalators to catch a train during winter and happened to slip on some ice on the platform. I slid quite fast on my bum, and I ended up getting stuck in the middle of a train and the platform, thigh high. I couldn't get myself out because of the awkward position, and called for help. The platform was full of people who just stared. I was pulled out by a drunk person just before the train started moving. Had a pulled hamstring and cuts and bruises in my arms and hands. Still get quite angry thinking about the bystanders not doing anything but gate. Hit by a car while riding a motorcycle. Old lady who could barely see in Palm Beach ran a light and hit me. August in Florida, and for some reason that day I put on a leather jacket and full face helmet. Helmet and leathers destroy. I walked away. Definitely had the feeling that a power greater than myself made that decision for me. I was driving on the highway one morning. Fog was super dense. I had the headlights on and was probably going about 50 to 60 miles per hour. There was a red Honda behind me that wasn't quite riding my ass, though was maybe a little closer than I would have preferred him to be given the weather. Suddenly, my hands are moving on their own and abruptly jerking the steering wheel into the lane to my left. No brakes, no mirror or blind spot check. I remember thinking to myself, why the hell did I do that? As I look back over to my right in time to see the Honda that was previously directly behind me slam at full speed into a 3, maybe 4 car pileup that I didn't even realize was in front of me. I missed it by maybe half a second. Still don't know what it was that kicked my reflexes off, but I'd probably be either dead or crippled for life if they hadn't. Jesus takes the wheel. Just trust me on this one. Pulled a guy out of a burning car. He was screaming that he needed his phone from his car while he laid on the dirt. I looked back thinking about grabbing it quickly. Heart stopped, and I turned around and ran for cover. Car blew up. Guy blew up at me for not doing more to save his shit. I told him that I won't risk my own health for something that isn't mine. I already pulled you out. That's all I needed to do. What a moron, that guy. Thanks for watching. Share your stories in the comments.